Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of No Restraints with Rudy Caseres. I'm Rudy Caseres. You already know that. Episode 31. Well, last week was my first week back in 2019. My guest, DJ Jaffe, that was quite the talk, almost an hour and a half. And I really appreciate all the comments. It's so many, it's hard for me to make sense of it all. And I appreciate the people who kept it civil. I know it's very hard to do that when you have such opposing viewpoints, but I always admire when people can have a respectful civil conversation with people that you completely disagree with, and that's okay. So my guest this week, Linea Johnson, she's going to talk to you about her book, Perfect Chaos, and all the other cool things she's got going on in her world. Before I bring her on, though, if you're watching this live, please let us know that you're here. Show us some love. Please feel free to share. I think if you're watching on your phone and if you press the like button enough times, it gives you the option to share. So please, please, please do that. It helps our audience grow, puts us in front of new faces, like Linea Johnson's friends and family and followers. If you're watching us because of Linea, thank you. I appreciate you. Stick around. I do these Facebook Lives, No Restraints, on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Rudy Caseres, every week. And then I also do a monthly Facebook Live for the mighty. So go check those out as well. You can also go to norestraints.net to see all of them, all 31 episodes of No Restraints, and even more stuff on the website. Go check that out. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest right now, and I'm going to ask her a question similar to every single guest that I've ever had on. So tell the whole world, the whole No Restraints universe, solar system, galaxy, who is Linea Johnson?
I didn't prepare an elevator speech yet. I am Linea Johnson. I'm a co-author with my mom, Cinda Johnson, of the book Perfect Chaos, and it came out 2012 with St. Martin's Press. You can still find it pretty much everywhere books are sold. And in my other time, I work with the American Disability Act National Network and their Knowledge Translation Center, and also just as a disability advocate, mental health advocate. I speak all over the country, and I do freelance writing for various magazines and online sources. So you can visit my website at lineajohnson.com, Linea, and find my stuff there.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to link to everything. And I'm glad that we talked before our Facebook Live, because you reminded me that I should be doing these, I should be having all my videos with captions. So as tedious as it is, this video will have captions. It's not live right now. Sorry. I wish someday in the future we'll be able to do live captions and it's like completely 100% accurate, but I'll have to go on that and do it manually. But I want to make sure that these shows are accessible as possible. I've done them in the past, so it helps when someone pulls me aside and says, yes, this does matter, and it's very important. So I want to make sure every chance I get. We have another fan of captions as well, so look out for those later on in the day. I will get to those. So thank you, Linea, for bringing that up.
Thanks. Yeah, it's important.
And I just want to show you how much of a fan I am. I have 2 copies of Perfect Chaos. And of course, I will put all the links down below in the comments after we are done. You know, I remember I wrote a post for National Eating Disorders Awareness Month last year, and you happened to be reading it and were inspired to write about your own struggles. And I was like, I appreciate that shout out, because we're not friends. We don't know each other that well. And you did that. And I was like, I need to support you somehow. Shame on me for not buying this book, first of all. But I went and bought a copy. And then you were nice to send me a signed copy with you and your mother. So thank you so much for that. I always appreciate it when people send me signed copies of their books, because it's amazing. And like, I love all books related to bipolar. Like I devour them. I'm on a world tour to basically read every single bipolar memoir, and some are better than others. So I appreciate the work that you put into yours, and we're going to talk about that. But before we get into the book, talk about more about your backstory. How did we get to the point of where you're writing a book?
Well, I originally started my life as a musician. So I grew up playing piano and wanted to be a concert pianist. That was my big life goal. And throughout everything, I always journaled. I journaled. And I grew up as a very intense child. And I think I started getting my first depressions in high school. And then I went to music school where I had my first real break. And I actually had to take a medical leave and go home. I was extremely suicidal. I was hospitalized for the first time. And it was at 19 that I received my diagnosis of bipolar. And, I continued to live through everything. And just as my family was trying to grapple with what this means and what this is, my mom noticed that I had been journaling. And we just thought, there's so much we can share about what I've been going through that is such a common experience and such a family experience that so many people are going through. And so we decided we wanted to write a book, my mom and I together, because we want people to know they're not alone and that it is a full family experience. And I say family beyond blood relations. Family can be many, many different things. And so it's definitely you dealing with your diagnosis, but it's also those people in your life that support you and that surround you. So I was really happy that I could write the book with my mom.
Now, speaking of your mother, how does that come to be where you're writing a book with your mother? Because I've read plenty of bipolar memoirs. I've read plenty of memoirs, but I don't think I've ever read one that was co-written by a mother and daughter. So how does that to be? Did you want to write your own story? Did your mom say, I want my story? Did you combine stories? How did that work out?
So actually, pretty much, I want to say like 90% of my parts in the book are journal entries. So they're all written either as it's happening or the day after or like immediately after. And then all of my mom's were written later. And so I could have just published it by myself, but I did want that extra perspective. And so when we started working with our wonderful editor at St. Martin's, Nicole, she really helped us kind of figure out how to shape putting those two stories together and having my mom write past tense and I was in present tense. And so it's a very intense story. So we were hoping that having my mom write in past tense, that you can kind of get the sense that, things work out a bit at least.
Yeah. And like when you were going through the process, was there anything that you didn't want your mom to find out about?
Oh, yeah, it was a very interesting ride. I think one of the hardest things for me, I'm still a perfectionist and I actually can say this honestly, I grew up not doing drugs or really drinking in high school. And so talking to my parents about the drug use was the hardest part. I mean, obviously talking to them about feeling suicidal and all of that, but telling them about using cocaine, that was like terrifying. And, all of the things I did to kind of, self-soothe in bad ways, telling them about cutting, all of that was kind of hard. Kind of those secret things that I did. So that was a process. They were really wonderful about it. But it definitely was like, there were layers of things that I kind of like told them slowly.
Yeah. I know I could never write a book with my mother. So was there times during the writing process where you just felt like, oh, I don't think I could do this, or I don't feel like my voice is being heard as much as my mother's?
No, actually, I often worried more that her voice wouldn't be heard as much just because my side was so intense. And I mean, my parts were pretty much already written. And so the only changes that we really ended up making to mine were actually more for legal reasons of like changing names and places so that other people that might have been involved in using drugs with me weren't called out. So there are people that go through it with me might notice that there are some things that seem different, but those were just changed, again, to just protect the people in the book. And so I was worried my mom's voice wouldn't get heard as much. But I think that the family voice is so important that I really think we had such a wonderful editor to be able to really make it even. And I feel like my mom thinks her voice was heard equally as well.
Now,
You
have
can
you
ask
ever?
her.
Maybe she'll pop up in the comments. But
Yeah.
have you ever received criticism from peers, especially in the mental health community? Like, oh, why did you have your mom like co-write the story? Why can't you write your own story?
I never have. We've got nothing, and I personally have got nothing but people actually really appreciating it. And you know, I think for people that don't have a strong bond with their mom or blood relations or family, I think that it's painful, I'm sure, to hear my mom's fight for me and how much she loved me if you don't feel like you have that. But I think we also hear from people that were just really like, it's good to know that to realize how much people love me that I might not even be noticing, because you get so caught up in the depths of depression or mania. Sometimes you don't recognize those friends or people that are there fighting with you and that love you so much. I know when I'm suicidal, I assume that just everyone hates me and thinks I'm horrible. And so I think that it was nice for people to kind of see that love from the other side, from my mom's perspective.
Yeah, and no, it is interesting to see because part of me wishes that I had that kind of relationship with my mother, and there's also a part of me that really, really values independence and wouldn't want anyone to get involved with my healthcare decisions or try to talk me into one decision or the other. So you're a little bit older now because of the book. You don't have to tell the whole world your age, but has that evolved since then? Like obviously when you wrote the book, or what's detailed in the book is in your early college years. Do you feel more independent, wanting to do your own thing, wanting to find your own identity past being this co-author of a memoir?
Yeah, that has actually also been a really interesting process because when we wanted to get the book published, I have this sun on my chin. We had a really wonderful person that told us we needed to build a platform. And so we really built that platform as a pair. And so we built a joint Facebook page, a joint website, everything was joint. And I mean, we started doing that, I think, in 2010. So it's almost 10 years ago. And, the book came out in 2012. And, I'm in my early 30s now. I want to have my own life and my own career. And so throughout the process, it's not that we still present together sometimes, but really trying to build our own platforms now. She's, she is well known in the special education community, so she has her own platform in that. But for me, just as someone growing into their own career, kind of building my own career in the disability advocacy world, it's been interesting. So I finally started my own website, and my own Twitter, and we've just been kind of figuring out that process. And when it comes to like healthcare things, I've always felt that I've had the autonomy to make my own decisions. But I do trust her opinion. Also, I mean, now I trust my husband's opinion, and I have been with my husband, Josh, for 13 years now. And so now I trust my mom and dad and Josh, but also feel like I can make my own decisions. So both in healthcare and in my own life, it's good to kind of have that balance.
Yeah, and I noticed a recurring theme throughout the book is that your mother is wanting to be very protective and wanting the best for you, and also getting like very stressed out like when you're going through your worst crises, but also not wanting to get to the point where she's controlling your life, wanting to give you options. I think that's important because I sometimes like don't have enough empathy for parents because it's not that hard. I don't have kids, so I can't fully put myself in a parent's shoes of what it must be like to have a son or daughter who is suicidal, going through crisis, especially when I can't physically be in the same city as them. So I can only imagine how my brain would react and wanting to have some semblance of control when I've seen this person, like basically, like obviously since they were born. So it's just an interesting take of having the mother perspective, going through that self conflict of like, I want to be the mother, I want to do all I can, but I also know that you have your autonomy, and it ultimately comes down to what you want.
Mm-hmm. You know, the biggest, I think thinking back, the biggest or the hardest part of publishing the book, the actual publishing and editing process, was the subtitle. I hate the word save being in the title. We had the biggest fight about that. And I know marketing, I mean, now I work in communications too, so I understand like marketing and like keywords and words that are going to draw people to the book. And they, they really wanted to keep the word save because they thought that it was a word that was going to, draw people to buy the book. And originally, I think it was a daughter's struggle to survive bipolar, a mother's journey to save her. And since I couldn't get rid of the word save, we decided to change it to a mother's struggle to save her, because she can't save me, right? It's not, I still kind of cringe at it, but so we really decided that as a mother, I mean, she tried to save me. She wants to save me. I'm her baby, but ultimately it's my life, and there are decisions that I have to make. And I really felt that I was the only one that could really save myself. I mean, certainly there are things people can do to help you, but that word save is so strong.
Yeah. I was reading through the back part, all the blurbs and everything and the description. And it sounds like it is, yeah, they really make it seem like this like harrowing story, like almost like a summer blockbuster, and rebuilding of trust and cross-country flights, courage, faith, love, darkest times. And yes, it's a very harrowing story, but it's also a very human one. Like this is not a summer blockbuster. This is something that can be very intimate and interpersonal between you and your family. And so did you ever worry about giving kind of a false idea of what it's like with bipolar, or that you had to have like this traditional story arc of the plot, the rising action, the climax, and then you have the happy ending at the end?
Yeah, writing a memoir, it certainly is weird. For the longest time, I never considered myself like a writer or an author, especially because I was like, it's just my journals, it's just my life. But creating a product, a publishable product, we did have to have a story arc, and we did have to kind of shape some of it. And there were parts that we decided not to put in. Like you mentioned my eating disorder. It's not really in the book at all because we decided it was just too many things. I had too much. It was like too intense to deal, and like too many storylines to follow for following my eating disorder and my bipolar. And so yeah, shaping it was it. It's a weird process when it's like your own life and your own story, but you also want to make it engaging and something that people want to read as a book,
Yeah, no, it's a fine line. And I was talking to my wife last night. It's like, I got to write a book because it's the gift that keeps on giving. And like, you write a book that really affects a lot of people. It's just like, you'll be known for that for the rest of your life, for better or for worse. But it's something where you can keep making a career out of, and like you do other things as well, and you've certainly had more success than most people in their entire life. But I think still a large percentage of people would know you from this book. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's it's interesting, especially being a book, about mental illness and about something that's so stigmatized. And so, like, when I create a LinkedIn profile or like want to do more of my professional capacity, there's never a point now where I can like hide my mental illness and my bipolar. It's always out there. It's very public. And I've really gotten to the point now where I'm fine. And I want people to know. I want people to know it's like, yes, I can be successful and I can work in the business world and I can do all these things and I have bipolar. And you should know that you probably have other coworkers with bipolar that just don't feel safe enough to be able to express that or say that. And it's way more common than you think. And not just bipolar, but depression, anxiety. And so, yeah, having the book out there, it's really exciting and wonderful. And it makes it so I can't go back in sharing this thing that a lot of people hide,
Yeah, I mean,
For better or worse.
it's the reason why we connected. It's how I found you, and you must still get emails and people coming up to you like that were inspired by the book and wanting to share their own story because of you.
Yeah, we have had such amazing connections with fans and people that share their stories with us. It's so incredible being able to really connect intimately with people that might be strangers, but then suddenly we can be best friends, because we've had such similar stories. I mean, very different, but similar in so many ways. And I feel so blessed to be able to connect with people on that level and for them to feel comfortable sharing those things with me. They say that my book helps them feel less alone, but I want them all to know they make me feel less alone. Every time I hear their stories, I've been hospitalized 5 times. And so they help me just as much as I might help them,
Yeah, does that feel weird to have fans?
Yeah, it does.
Do you have like a name for your fans?
Oh, no. Friends?
Yeah. I was thinking you called them like Linaniacs, maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. I'm awful.
Oh, that's
Before we continue, I want to make sure to catch people up who might just be joining us. You're watching No Restraints with Rudy Caseres, my guest, Linea Johnson, co-author of Perfect Chaos, A Daughter's Journey to Survive Bipolar, A Mother's Struggle to Save Her. And so let's get to some comments. Patrick Lawson, who is a former guest, the last guest of 2017. We don't save lives, we help people to choose life. I like that because you can't force someone to live, and even if you try, it's not going to work out in the long run. At least that's my view. Good words, Patrick. I'm with you 100%, Linea. The word save is hard to hear. What say you to that, Linea Johnson?
I love that. It's a choice. Yeah. And I have to choose to live every time. And every time I'm suicidal, it's hard. And I don't want to, saving, it is a strong word. I thank you for that comment. I appreciate that.
Now, what would you say was the number one reason or 2, 3 reasons why you chose to not take your life?
Oh, man. That's a hard one. Most recently, I was hospitalized in March for being suicidal and from a depression. And this sounds awful. I absolutely love my parents and my husband, of course, but I kept thinking about my niece and nephew. And I had an uncle who died, and I never met him. And I just kept thinking, like, my niece and nephew growing up, not knowing me, or only knowing me until they're 10 and 5. And I, I just kept trying to remember them, because it's hard to find a reason. Sometimes it just feels like no one's going to notice, or that the thing that I always feel is that it's going to be better for them, and as many times as they can say that's absolutely not true. I just get to a place that I hate myself so much, and I feel like such a burden that I feel like it's going to be better for them. So reminding myself of my niece and nephew, and really wanting to be in their lives. I don't have kids, and so they're my babies.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that you're still struggling, because you do mention that in the epilogue of the book, that there's no happy ending with the bow tied at the end. Like, you're still struggling. And even though you might not go to the lowest lows that you have been in the past, like, this is something that bipolar, especially with depression, that can suck the life out of you. And there are times where, like, at least for me, where it just hits me like a ton of bricks. And it may not be like I had something major going on in my life. It just can just be like an existential crisis. Just like, I don't like being in this world. So I appreciate you talking about that and still having this ongoing journey. Just because the book is over, you've had all the success, there's still a person that has to live this life. And so, can you go more into detail, as much as you're comfortable with, about how that journey has been since the book came out?
Absolutely. It is a journey. I think that sometimes when I get depressed, it's knowing that it's feeling like there's no end, that it is a journey, that it's this lifelong thing. And that at other times it's empowering that it's a journey and that I've survived it and that I can keep surviving it. And so it really ebbs and flows. And you have to really sometimes take it day by day or hour by hour. I think what a lot of people don't know is that, I think people that don't know me very well, they can look at me and think I'm very successful or that I'm doing these cool things. But I actually right now am, I'm having maintenance electroconvulsive therapy every month or 6 weeks. And I've been doing that for the last 6 months. And I feel like there's way more stigma in ECT or shock therapy than even bipolar sometimes, but it has helped so much. And my depression it's just gone. But at the same time, I hate it. I hate having ECT, but I'm to the point now where I can have it on a Friday and then go back to work on Monday. And so people don't realize, I think, what it takes to be stable, and that sometimes it's not just like resolved, or sometimes it'll be fine for 2 years and then you have to struggle again. And it takes a lot of strength and it takes a lot of work. And I think people need to know that about individuals that are struggling with any kind of mental health conditions, be it anxiety, depression, bipolar, like your classmates, your coworkers. Sometimes you don't know that they're doing these intense treatments, but then still capable of working, and what that takes.
Now, with the ECT, a criticism of that would be that you're not really getting at the root of your depression, be that hidden trauma or existential issues, things going on with that, relationships, that you're basically just masking that with the ECT. Have you thought about that?
Well, that's a very heated discussion. And I really think that from my personal perspective, I definitely believe in therapy, and I do therapy. I work on all of that, and I think that's really important. But I also think for me, it helps to think of it as a medical. It's a medical illness, and just like someone might have to go get chemo for cancer, we shouldn't judge them for that. And so I feel like I know that this is, again, to each their own. Personally, taking medication, having ECT, I think of it as a medical illness and something that I'm treating medically, and that it's a chemical imbalance. And that certainly doesn't take away from the other things that I need to work on, like my perfectionism and my overachievement problem that leads me to depression. And I work on that with my therapist as well. And so for me, it's a really multifaceted. It's not that I just do ECT. I work my butt off doing all of it, you know? And it's also meditating and exercise and sleeping right and really being present with myself. So there's so many parts to it.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I'm with you regarding choice, because there's been people who have shamed me for taking medications, for doing this and that. And in the end, what works for you, as long as it's your decision and you have your own agency. Like, who are we to judge each other?
And everyone's body's different. So everyone's body's different. Everyone's paradigm in history is different. I hate to judge someone that's making choices that work for them.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to, you said the word chemical imbalance, and that is a term that is very often misconstrued or misunderstood. Can you talk about that?
I don't feel like I am a medical person enough to be able to talk about that correctly. So maybe we can send out some resources after.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. But this is no restraints. I asked the hard questions. No softballs here.
I just don't want to give inaccurate medical advice or medical explanations. That my husband's a physician's assistant, so he can do it.
No, that's totally fine. I want to get back to platform, because you had this website, you have the social media, but then the book came out, and it's been quite a while. Was there any thought into, you know what, I just want to exit the public stage. I don't want to have my whole life being put out there. I'm proud of the book, but I don't want to no longer be a public figure. Did that go on your head?
Yeah, off and on. It's hard. I talked about my perfectionism and overachievement problem. And so there's times when I just want to like abandon it and not ever talk about mental health again. And then there's, I think that for a lot of people, there's a lot of ego tied in. And so for me, trying to be really honest about, my ego connected to being an author or being well-known in something. But then also really remembering that when it comes down to it, I do it with my heart. And I often get mad at myself because I think I'm doing it for fame, which I'm sure that, there might be that part, but I try to, when I really talk to myself, I just always remember the stories that I hear. And so while I don't know if maybe someday I'll get out of it, but mental health advocacy is just my passion. I want to help people and help them feel less alone and help them feel like they deserve to get the treatment and services that they deserve. And so I think it's hard to step away when I really think about the people that I've talked to through the years that have come up to me at conferences or readings, and
Yeah, and like this is something I've been struggling with, especially over the holidays, where I was going through a period where, you know what, this whole mental advocacy thing, like maybe it's just not for me anymore. Maybe I just want to take it easy, be a family man, this and that. And then I just I can't walk away from it, especially when there's still injustice going on in the world where forced treatment is being normalized and all these things that like no one is really fighting the way I'm fighting at. And I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't people who are anti-forced treatment, they're doing great things, but it's just like we're getting our asses kicked and I need to do all I can. So even though I don't want to do it all the time, that I feel it's my obligation, because if I'm silent, then there's no good that's going to come out of that. And I think that's just something a lot of advocates deal with, where we wish we can live quote unquote normal lives, at least at times, where we can just take it easy, just live the good life. But there's injustice going on in the world. And there's plenty of people out there who never have that privilege of being to have any kind of downtime. And so that's why I'm here. I have my own platform. I get to talk to wonderful people like you, and even people who I don't necessarily agree with, but I want to make sure that I'm providing a platform where people can come together and talk about very, very sensitive subject matter that others are not getting the platform to speak on. So that's my rant for today. I try to do only one soapbox rant a show, but I want to make sure to give Patrick Lawson some more love, because he's killing it in the comments. It can be so bloody hard, especially when you're in that mindset, but the world is a better place with all of us in it. And again, what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. As individuals, we have to do what works for each of us and not let the words of others stop us doing what helps us. Thank you so much, Patrick Lawson from Wagga Wagga, Australia.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, and how cool, we're worldwide.
Oh yeah, when I interviewed him, I think it was like 7 or 8 a.m. in Australia, and it was like a different season. I think it was like summertime. Yeah, you're going through a heat wave in Australia.
Comment. Just going back really quick to what you were saying. I want to also just say that, yeah, I'm an activist at heart, right? It's really hard for me to see injustice. But the other thing, speaking of each of us taking care of ourselves, there are times when I have to force myself to step back, because sometimes it's like there's so much heartbreak that it can just destroy me. And I want to be able to like be there for everyone and like fight for everyone. And so there are times when, just for self-care sake, I have to step back, as much as I don't want to leave people, but, yeah. So I think that it does ebb and flow like that, because I get I don't know if you can ever be too empathetic, but my heart breaks too hard. And so sometimes to keep myself out of a depression or something like that, it's a balance between fighting injustice and activism and advocacy and taking care of yourself.
No, I agree with you. And based on your social media, you're an avid book reader. I'm very jealous of your book collection. And so hats off to you. Everyone has different kinds of self-care, and I'm glad that you have yours, and that it's something that is not drug abuse.
Yeah.
So that's always a plus.
That is helpful.
Before we start winding down, I did want to talk about eating disorders, because that's something that you're not as open about, and I don't want to intrude. So has that changed? Do you feel like that's something that you are more comfortable speaking about?
Yes. It hasn't really been my platform at this point. Speaking of platforms, I am very open to talking about eating disorders. And I think that there's so much to say on it. I actually, man, I have had a rough 2 years, when we're being open and honest. And last year I actually went into a 3-month outpatient program. So, I was, and everyone should look up the Health at Every Size movement and activism that's going on. The place that I went to was really focused on that, and reminding us that, bodies are just like each treatment is to your own. Bodies are meant to be different sizes, and sometimes people that the world sees as heavier are just as healthy. It's just what our culture views as what needs to be healthy. And it's hard. The thing for me with anorexia is also, as I'm going through trying to fight perfectionism, people see what they see as positives are actually the things that are destroying me, right? So when I was really underweight and when I was trying to gain weight, and I would just mention on the side or something like, oh, someone will be like, oh, I can't eat this, I'm trying to lose weight. And I say something like, oh, I'm trying to gain weight. And they'll be like, oh, you don't need to. And, people, they think it's like, but you're so thin and it's great and wonderful. And look at how wonderfully thin you are. And it's like, yeah, but like, it's causing me so that like my vision is impaired. So I think it's hard. It's hard to fight something that people are continuously telling you is a good thing about you. So I feel that I'm definitely at a healthy weight now, but it's still a process of reminding myself. I feel like I have no idea what my body looks like in the mirror. Like I'm reminding myself that I'm healthy. And now when I go outside, I don't shiver uncontrollably. And I just went on a run. I don't know if you saw it in my Instagram. I had to stop running for a long time because that was one of the things I was really compulsive about. And so I was able to go on a run in a safe and moderate way. And I didn't get totally exhausted right away, even if I wasn't in good shape, because my body was healthy enough that it could function. And so it's reminding myself, like, even though I still don't like my body, it's so much happier. It's functioning so much better.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you're more open about that, because it's something that I've struggled with. I don't have an eating disorder, but I've definitely have struggled with eating and with my body. And it's just all the ebbs and flows. And especially when you're out in the public, people are very judgmental of how you look. So my hat's off to anyone who is open about it and open about their struggles, because it's not something where if you're anorexic, you gain weight and all of a sudden you're no longer anorexic, and vice versa. So
yeah, I wish.
yeah, so my hat's off to you, and I hope that you continue sharing and continue on your journey, because it is much needed and it is much appreciated. So hats off to you. And before we take it home, let's give some more love to people in the comments. Joelle Marie, it can be painful to stay in the fight, but also painful to step back. Empathy can be hard on a person. And Chrissy Hodges, yay, Linea rocks. You got.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Yes, she is a member of the Linea Johnson fan club. And
that's so weird. Friend club. Can we call it that?
Yes, the Friends of Linea Johnson. I'm a fan of Chrissy Hodges. Like, I've got her book laying around.
That's why I was excited.
Do you have any fun Chrissy Hodges stories?
It's always like weird when like people that you follow or people that, books you've read or like have looked up to are like know who you are. I don't know. It's just like
No, I mean, in a way, we're all one big family, and we don't always agree on everything, but we try to lift each other up, I guess, and try to further the conversation. And so I love that in the mental health community, is that we want to make sure that we're making the world better for everyone, and not just people who have a voice, who have a platform. So thank you again, Chrissy. Do you have any fun Chrissy Hodges stories, Linea Johnson?
Oh, I don't know at the moment. I have to think about it. Just I don't know, Chrissy and you, and like you guys help me as an advocate to feel like when I'm feeling overwhelmed, like we can lift each other up, and like I can look at what she's doing, I can look at what you're doing, and it helps when I need to step back to know you guys are still fighting, Yeah,
we pick up your slack. Well, before we bring it home, I think I've said that like 3 times already. But you've been through a lot. You've had suicide. You've been suicidal. You've had hospitalizations. You've had self-harm. You've had eating disorder. You've had the worst of bipolar. You've had all kinds of things. You've had your education. You've had your awards, your big speeches, and everything. What have you gained from that? And is there, as cliche as this question is there anything that you regret or would change?
I guess what I've gained is I try to remind myself is strength and resilience. I think it's easier for us to downplay that for people that have lived through any kind of hardship, to downplay our resilience and our fight for ourselves. And as for regrets, I don't know. The whole process, it's been amazing to grow with it. And I don't think I can't think of any regrets at this point. I think that it's been an amazing journey and I've met amazing people. Yeah, I mean, certainly not always fun, but
Now, let me ask you this: if you didn't have all this maelstrom going on in your life, for better or worse, did you think that you would end up being a concert pianist?
That's a whole nother story. Being a musician that can make a living being a musician is a very difficult journey in itself. So I don't know. I don't know what would happen with that. I have a lot of friends that, yeah, it's also can be a painful process. As they told me in music school, you get one audition. So if you're having a bad day, too bad. So there's so much stress and anguish in that. And it takes so much work. I was practicing like 8 hours a day. And yeah, if I guess at this point, thinking of regrets, I guess that maybe I wouldn't have wanted to pursue music at that high a level, because I feel like now the piano is not my personal best friend anymore. Now it became something bigger for other people, not just for myself.
Yeah. And to be fair, no pressure. If you ever do a musical performance, I will be there in the audience with my Linea Johnson fan club sign.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure I give you the final words, because who am I? People came for you. So let the whole world know where they can find you, where they can keep in touch with you, and any other cool things you got going on in your life. Or if you just want to impart some words of wisdom, the floor is yours.
Well, you can visit my website if you want to reach out or see what I'm doing. And I don't have a ton coming up this next year. Maybe some secret projects in the works. And yeah, I just think, remember that we're not alone. That even when you think that you don't have people on your side, there's an amazing world of people, be it on the internet, be it in support groups, that are here to love you. And yeah, it's hard, but it's worth it. It is.
Yeah, and the thing I appreciate most about you is that you do have this privilege, you do have these platforms, but you have a way of using it to lift other people up as well, and to, whether it's offering advice to navigate productivity or accommodations at your job when you have your columns in Girl Boss or Hello Giggles, in your presentations, you give back a lot. So I want to make sure that you heard that from me, because I really do very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming on here. No Restraints, episode 31. Been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm glad that we made this happen. Finally. So show Linea Johnson some love. I'm going to leave all the links down below. And feel free to keep commenting if you're watching this tomorrow, a year from now, 10 years from now. Congratulations. We all survived. That's awesome. Please, please, please stick with me. I'll be back next week. New day. So please stay tuned for updates because I have a big announcement coming this weekend that'll change my whole schedule. But that's my teaser. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. See you again. Keep showing your love because it's for your own good. Bye.